morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to episode 96 of Blowback, Exposing Imperial Decline. I am getting a notice as I do this that I can no longer stream to X. So I always stream to X, and then the minute I start streaming, I just get this notice, which was distracting me. But they said I can get a premium account, and then I'll be able to stream to X. So anyway. So today we are discussing how our Lord and Savior, not Joseph Stalin, but Jesus Christ, saved Teflon Donald Trump. That's a little bit of sarcasm, obviously, but he narrowly missed having his head blown off, and this has to be one of the most momentous historic events, of the past several decades. And, it resulted in a very iconic photo that has to be, really, really great for Trump and his brand and his political aspirations. And it's such a great photo that you have the anti-Trumpers and the TDSers, swearing that this must have been a Trump false flag, that Trump must have staged this whole thing, because there's no way such an iconic and powerful photo could happen spontaneously. So these poor TDSers. But the reality is, that's total spontaneity. He narrowly missed having his head blown off, and that's his genuine response. So, I mean, Trump looks good. I mean, it really looks good for the Donald. And the question becomes, one of two things, right? Was this a lone gunman and severe incompetence by his protection detail, or were there elements within, the protection detail that were trying to, facilitate Trump's death? So, having said that, we are still waiting for Alex Fraser. Hopefully he will show up. He's one of our special guests. But did I forget? I got so distracted by the X thing. I forgot to introduce the panel. So, of course, we have Ben Toth in Paige, Hungary. I'm on the West Coast. We've got Ian Kummer from a suburb in Moscow. Greg Rosen is streaming live from Chicago, and Carlo Parcelli's in Washington, D.C. So thank you guys all very much for joining us. Alex, hopefully, will be joining us soon. But what do you guys think? Does anybody have any serious thoughts that it actually could be a conspiracy, or is this just a lone gunman that's been, well, we can get into the motivations of the gunman in a bit, but let's just open it up. What do you guys think?
Well, I want to say there's I wouldn't call the story confirmed, but there's a story going around Russian local news channels that if you go back to that photo, the woman who got to Trump first is allegedly a Russian immigrant.
Russian expat,
yes. Yes. Who's a martial arts athlete before coming to the USA, and then eventually ended up in the Secret Service. I wouldn't call that story confirmed, but that's the story going around, which is interesting. Especially since there was the controversy around the whether or not the female agents were diversity hires. There was all that, but no one really paid any attention to her, which I thought was a little unfair, because she was the first person to get to him, and she conducted herself well, but got basically, at least in the USA, no attention whatsoever. Unfortunately, she was so overshadowed by the negative publicity, which is unfortunate. But yes.
So what are they saying? I mean, so the fact that she was allegedly, a martial arts medalist or champion in Russia, and then she joins the Secret Service detail, are they suggesting that?
They are suggesting that, and there's controversy about that, because I don't know what's the. I wouldn't say it's impossible for an immigrant to get into the Secret Service, but I mean it would be unusual. It might just be fake news, but it would be interesting. But regardless of her origin, she did get overshadowed by the negative press, which is, I think, unfortunate. But yes.
Before we get into theorizing, which all we can do based on the information we have, I'd like to guide you a little bit through how powerful this fucking image is. I've never seen it before, but this is the stuff that appeared on Sunday as I kept looking what's going on. This is somewhere in Russia, all right? It's already on a shopping bag. China has the speed of the internet. I think it says something like Don the Builder. I don't know. Obviously, it made Time magazine cover. There was for Trump's ear already on Russian mortar shells, and of course China was the first, to all right, you can get it, and this is apparently Russians don't surrender.
Yes,
Russians don't people surrender. under huge emotions on all sides, really, not just the Trump derangement people, but others. Like people got carried away, and a lot of strong emotions globally were felt when this event happened. So I thought I'd just show you a bit of that.
Well, especially the rappers. There was like a whole litany of rappers holding their weapons, their AR-15s, who are now for Trump. But of course, that was all for their own aggrandizement, financially and otherwise. But people went crazy. For me, it was the only thing I can add at this point is that letting Trump stand up like that is against Secret Service policy. They're supposed to cover him so you can't see the victim or the attempted victim. And so that's the only thing I could add at this point. I personally don't think there's any conspiracy here involved at all, and I can speak to motive later on in the show.
I think outside of the USA, I think most of the response outside of the USA and I should add the Muppet states, the vassal states. I think outside of those countries, the responses were all kind of sarcasm. No one really actually cares that much. They're making the memes, they're signing the artillery shells. It's sarcasm, I think.
Yeah, I don't care that much either, frankly. And I will say one other thing. They talk about a ladder. This guy got on the roof with a ladder. But to tell you the truth, when I was that age or younger, actually, I could shinny up a gutter. And all these fucking buildings, they have gutters. I could get right up on a roof. Like I did it all the time. We go up there and drink beer. And it's nothing for somebody at age 20 to get up on a roof like that. Not a goddamn thing. Ladder, no ladder. It was nothing.
So you're just suggesting that the idea that he needed, help from the inside to do what he did is probably overblown.
Yeah, I haven't seen one photograph of the ladder yet. So
that's true.
There were photographs of the ladder itself.
Oh, they do?
Okay. They were. But I mean, it's not necessarily a conspiracy from the inside. I mean, I think I agree with your overall points, though. It wasn't necessarily an inside conspiracy to let him do it or to aid him. It could have just been neglect and incompetence that led to it. It could have been over compartmentalization too. If you had, I don't know if that, because what happens if you have more than one entity involved, they don't always communicate with each other the way they're supposed to. So you had at very least two different organizations, because you had local police and you had the Secret Service and maybe, a couple other agencies involved. We don't know, but that can happen too. Somebody thinks they have that roof covered and the other guy thinks the other guy had the roof covered.
And then they see this guy so brazenly, on the roof, and they think, am I going to kill this guy for being an idiot? He can't possibly be this brazen and really try to shoot Trump himself.
He was challenged by a police person. I don't remember if it was a man or what, but there was a police officer who apparently followed him up on the roof. He turned around, brandished the weapon at the police officer, and then turned around and fired while he had that window of opportunity still. So I think that's
okay.
Also, part of the reason why Trump didn't get hit, because the guy got interrupted. I think if he was not interrupted by someone, he absolutely would have nailed him. But he got interrupted. He squeezed off the shots as fast as he could and missed, and unfortunately did hit 2 people, one of whom died, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yes, that's the rundown of what is.
Yeah, true. I mean,
so far.
some of the creepier things, like he wasn't allowed to shoot for 4 minutes, 14 minutes, they come from Reddit. Which, come on, that we don't take that very much.
Yeah, I mean, that's a guy saying. I mean, there's always someone on 4chan or Reddit say, "Yes, I was the sniper. I flew the plane on 9/11." You know,
do you know exactly what we're talking about? Yeah, I mean, please don't go there. But what we do know, which has been established by the FBI, he immediately got 3 names. So it's Thomas Matthew Crooks, not just Tom Crooks or something like that. 20-year-old, loner. He was bullied in high school. He has no social media and apparently very difficult to get in his phone, the FBI had claimed. And, it's difficult to establish the ideological reasoning for all this. So I'm just waiting for the famous radicalized online, and then it can get, stinky. But I wouldn't say it is a clear cut, just another loner who was bullied in school, because that's someone you can use for anything, I'm just going to add that skeptical.
Well, that's all they've said. Loner bullied in school.
Yeah,
pretty much. Very tight-lipped. Go ahead, Carla.
Let me just elaborate a little on that, motive-wise. Here's this kid that was badly brutalized. I mean, bullied in school.
Yeah.
Just apparently very, very much so. And then right in his hometown, he has the world-class bully coming to speak. The world, probably one of the top 5 bullies in the world. And he goes, wow, this is my opportunity to get back to all the bullies. Because I'll tell you one thing about the bullies he had in high school, they're all Trump people. They're all MAGA. They're all assholes. And so he said that. The other thing that speaks to motive, the kid was intelligent. He appeared in a commercial, in an advertisement.
For BlackRock.
Right. And twice his image was up on the screen because of his mathematics savvy. A little like Ted Kaczynski, who was tremendously warped by being a victim of MK Ultra program. A lot of people don't know that, but when he was in college, Ted Kaczynski for a whole year was used as a guinea pig for an MK Ultra program to break down his self-esteem. That's documented. That's in the archives.
Yeah, and I don't think that program is dead. So there's another point.
No, I don't think so either. So this kid, he not only sees this world-class bully, but he sees this world-class ignorant fool going to one of the highest positions in the world. And he goes, he just snaps. He goes, we can end this. We have to end this. This has been my bet. This has been how I've been treated all my life, and I'm going to end it now. And I think the bullying and the fact that Trump doesn't have enough brains to fill that guy's thimble, a nanosecond of his ability to do mathematics. I think that had a whole lot to do with it.
So on Carlos'
psychologically plausible. Yeah.
On Carlos' point, I mean, I think that is the explanation for what was motivating the guy, the 20-year-old.
Billy Bob, I think that's all the story we're ever gonna get, whatever the reality is. I think it's going to be painted exactly this way.
It's going to be a very partisan. Of course, it's going to be a very partisan investigation. I mean, when someone tries to assassinate a political figure, usually the motive is political, so it's
usually.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. If someone had taken a shot at Biden, do you think the media would be all muddying the waters about him? No, we'd see the shooter's face on every screen in the country, in the world. Nonstop coverage. They would scrutinize every detail of his life, trying to, say, was he some sort of Trump support, but when someone taking a pot shot at Trump, nothing, zip. They say, oh, well, he was a registered Republican. Well, for one, he's 20 years old. this is maybe he was old enough to vote for the midterms, but this is the first presidential election he's ever even been old enough to vote in. And everybody seems to have memory hold that Democrats were openly telling their supporters to register as Republicans to vote for Nikki Haley. They were telling their guys to do that. Vote, register Republican. So in closed primary states, you can vote for Nikki.
No, I think that's the reason he's a Republican was because he's a Democrat and he wanted to vote against Trump in the Republican primary. I think that's absolutely true. So I agree with what's that?
There's a report from a schoolmate of him being a conservative in debates.
Oh, interesting.
In school. Yeah.
So no, I haven't heard that, and I mean, we're only speculating here.
Right.
My suspicion was that he could be an anti-Trump, conservative. Like there are anti-Trump conservatives, and but he did give money to a DNC cause, right? Like Blue Action or
$15. Yeah, his Wikipedia got cobbled together like on Sunday instantly. Reliable link. So he was a registered Democrat voter since 2020. Now he's voting age, and he gave $15 for this Vote Blue something pack. That doesn't tell us anything. But what Paulie makes another point is the first 20-year-old without a digital profile or an online profile is. I mean, there's definitely strange things here, but we can't really speculate.
No, it seems that there's trying to hide things and they're spinning things, and it's an election year, and they're really tightly controlling what we are able to know for certain about this person. But we can speculate. But the spin is obvious, right? So right after the incident, it took a really long time for the establishment press to admit that there was an assassination attempt, right? Yeah. And I mean, while it was obvious to anybody with common sense, the establishment press was, waiting and waiting and waiting. And I mean, I was told of the fact, like probably hours after it happened, and immediately I went to like MSN.com to see their headlines, knowing that something like that would be the biggest headline. And there was literally nothing about it for another, 45 minutes to an hour. And then it didn't even say, they tried to assassinate Trump. It just says that one of them said like Trump collapses,
loud noises heard.
Shooting at Trump.
Popping sounds heard at rally. Okay.
Yeah. That was all my Sunday morning.
That was not true of CNN though, and MSNBC.
I don't know.
How soon after? How soon? Because
I don't know. Rosalie told me. She alerted me to it. Yeah, and it wasn't long after. It was just, and they were showing the actual footage. So
by Sunday midday Hungarian time, that's when the British press started saying assassination attempt, and that's when I saw slowly the American press pick it up. Before that, it was popping sounds and loud noises. Yeah, all the morning.
But I honestly don't think it goes beyond this guy. This kid.
I think that's plausible.
Wow.
I think him being clay in the hands of anybody is also plausible. I don't know which, but I think we can all dismiss that this was, a packet of ketchup or something, that Trump wanted to do this to himself to get the PR points. I think that can be dismissed very easily. For example, you could have hired like a knifeman to do something like that, not get in actual danger where you don't turn your head inches away from democracy. I'm glad you didn't say that, because some liberals went crazy after the shooting, Jack Black's, he's got a band, Tenacious D, and the other guy, and it said, the next time, don't miss. I mean, there are these statements, and for people are surprised at political violence in America, which always shocks me, because this guy was Hitler, this was Stalin, this was for over a year, cover after cover. He's a threat to our democracy. He's a proper.
No, that's the point I wanted to hit home and underscore. I mean, the media, of course, after something like this happens, they have to denounce it, right? They have to denounce political violence, say this is not America, this is not how we deal with things. But they are singularly responsible for getting us to this point with their over-the-top, hysteric anti-Trump rhetoric about threat to democracy, the new Hitler, kids in cages. All of this kind of rhetoric. I mean, any rational person that believes that is going to think to themselves, well, I've got to do something. We've got to get this guy out of there. And so I mean it's totally, it follows in, it's perfect, a logical response to this kind of rhetoric, that you're going to have people that believe it and are committed to these principles of democracy doing anything they can to get rid of this threat. And so
I mean, that's the thought exercise, right?
Yeah.
If Hitler was standing right there, wouldn't be the right thing to do to kill him? It's kind of the thought exercise.
Listen, it's all true about Trump, but it's also true about them. It's more, even you might make a case that it's more true about Biden with the genocide in Gaza and the support for Ukraine.
Well,
God.
The point, though, the point isn't what's true. The point is not what, I'm not making a discussion about what's true. What the point is, the picture the media is painting, and the media culpability in this shooter doing what he did. This is the media's fault, because the media is presenting a reality, and I'm not saying it has anything to do with actual reality, but they're presenting this reality that's going to make people behave like that. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, and so for them to say, oh, we oppose violence, how could, we have to denounce any kind of political violence when they are the ones pushing it and stoking it and influencing it with their ridiculous rhetoric. Now, we could have the discussion about if it's ridiculous rhetoric or not, but that's a different topic, kind of.
The whole notion, and a number of people have pointed this out from around the world, that the stupidness of that statement is, the United States is victimizing the entire world and its own population.
Yeah.
And it's the most violent country in the world by leaps and bounds when you consider its foreign policy.
Yeah, all violence is political.
Including assassinations.
Well, how can you say that? Yeah.
All violence is political, the prime being currently Gaza and Ukraine.
It's a historical, illiterate thing. And it's contemporarily illiterate as well as historic. But to pretend that violence has no place in American politics, of course, is a joke. But again, I'm the important point here is these hypocrites like Jake Tapper who say these over the top crazy things about Trump, or they present this over the top crazy picture that we have a system and it is the best system in the world, and this evil motherfucker is going to destroy this glorious, glorious system, and we have to stop him. Like, people that believe that are going to act, and they're going to do things. And I think it was he was a lone nut job gunman that believed the lies of Jake Tapper and all of the establishment press that pretended Trump is some sort of unique evil that threatens our great, wonderful society. And
from the other side, you get the same kind of rhetoric, which leads to the attempted kidnapping of Whitmer, Governor Whitmer in Michigan. But you get all that. But let me just say, I lost my train of thought. But
I can break it up with some funny gaffes that followed this, because everybody, including Kamala, Joe, everybody said this is unacceptable. This is not what our society. And let me just show you two quick gaffes, which I think are really, really funny. This was how we settle things in America. I think it says it twice. I hope we got volume.
We resolve our difference at the battle box.
The battle box.
That's how we do it. At the battle box.
Yeah. America settle things at the battle box.
Octagon.
The next one, just imagine him completing this sentence. Is just 8 seconds. Go.
I'm asking every American to recommit, to make America. Think about it. Let's make it so.
He almost fucking said it. All right. So that was more humor than anything else.
Battle box. I think that's in Finnegan's Wake. But
battle box.
I did remember what I wanted to say. Lee Camp, he had a whole show he devoted to the fact that none of 2025 is new. This is basically the platform that the Republicans in one form or another always issue. Get rid of the Department of Education, get rid of anything that smacks of human rights or equality for African Americans or anything like that. Get rid of Medicare, get rid
EPA.
of the whole thing. Okay. But what Lee missed, my friend Lee here in Washington, is that there was a new Supreme Court decision just made, which just gave the next president, and actually the current president, if he cares to use it, tremendous new powers to affect something like Project 2025. So that there's a
Now,
whole
which
landscape is going to change. So you guys, I don't know about you guys, but I know a lot of people out there. They're going, don't worry, just be happy. But I tell you, there's a Trump storm coming for a lot of people who are going to be scapegoated for everything that's wrong in this country. And
Okay, so let me. Yeah.
and
So I mean, first I want before we get too far.
I rue the
No.
day that guy missed.
Okay,
Oh,
no,
Jesus, yeah.
fair.
Okay.
So Gretchen Whitmer, I mean, I know Carlo referenced Gretchen Whitmer. My understanding is that was an actual false flag.
No, that's
and it was
bullshit.
like,
That's
so
bullshit, by
if
the
that's
way.
in dispute, I honestly thought that wasn't in dispute, but it might be a disputed thing. But yeah, I thought that was a false flag. I didn't think that was actual real people, just regular guys that thought, hey, let's go kidnap. Like I thought that was a total FBI.
FBI
false flag.
recruited.
Well, if it's a sting,
Yeah,
then they're stupid.
but
Okay, but they
to
did
your
plan to do it.
to your greater point that Trump does represent a serious threat, and so you're kind of suggesting that the rhetoric from the Democrats isn't really all that over the top. He does represent a significant threat to all that is good and pure.
Ooh, your audio.
Yeah.
Billy Bob, your audio went down the drain
It's
like
terrible.
RoboCop.
But I was going to say, maybe while you're fixing the audio, I was going to say, does anyone remember when the Joker movie came out and the media was basically openly trying to incite another theater shooting? Does anyone remember that? They were like talking about it every day. Oh, I hope no one shoots up a theater. That'd be really terrible if someone did that. And we would have to give it, wall-to-wall coverage and make that person, a celebrity. They're basically begging someone to shoot up the theater.
This is the Joaquin Phoenix movie, right? I didn't even watch it.
Yes,
I didn't know this.
Yes,
It's a brilliant movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, it was like they decided it was like an alt-right movie or whatever. So because do you remember when the Batman movie had that terrible shooting that happened when the Batman movie came out?
In Colorado.
Yes. Yeah, your audio is still terrible.
Yeah, something's going on.
Maybe.
Yeah. Let me work on that. I'm just realizing this is off, so let me work on my audio. I don't know what happened. I'll just switch to my computer audio. Yeah, sorry about that, guys.
You're under a witness protection program or something.
Yes. But yeah, so, and I don't know, as far as the whole rhetoric goes, I mean, it is a civil war situation. I don't think this is going to be over till one side's dead. I mean, seriously, it's not like I'm not saying it's a good thing or glorifying. I think that's where it's going to go. I mean, it's just, how could it not go that way? It's just going to go until both sides come to blows, and it'll be over when one side's dead. I think that's really where it is a civil war.
Over what?
I don't know if it's necessarily a civil war, but I think it is. It's a mass bloodbath situation that we're heading towards. I think that what's keeping that from happening is that we have a strong dollar. People who are below the poverty line get, food stamps, get enough support, just enough support to keep their heads above water. If the dollar has hyperinflation, and then that goes, all those social safety nets we do have go away. I mean, there's going to be nothing, if the military and the police and all that breaks down, I think there's just going to be nothing stopping.
I don't agree with that. Two sides are not equal.
Yeah, I challenge you.
What are the two
in a
sides?
different way.
Project 2025 wants to either do away or greatly diminish the FBI. Okay? They want to do away with it. They want to do away
with the FBI.
What's that?
Do away with the FBI?
Yeah, largely.
Well, good. I hate the FBI. Fuck
but I'm telling you, the point I'm trying to make is the FBI will do away with you before you can do away with the FBI. Believe me.
Yeah, what was it? The
yeah.
six ways till Sunday that the intelligence can screw with you.
Exactly.
Trump's original mistake.
Consumer quote. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
I mean, I
I'm
agree with that. The two sides aren't equal. I think the Democrats have the USA in the bag. If they want to set up camps or do whatever they want, there's really at this point
Okay,
they have all the cards.
Well, no, it's the Republicans that want to set up the camps.
Okay,
They
I
might
don't.
want to, but
I don't. Here's my point of view, distant, far away. I'm going to start in one way, but finish another. It won't be too long. So, a lot of people got carried away by Trump, showing pretty genuine bravery. I think I would have cried and hid under that thing, but he got up and pumped his fists and said, "Fight, fight," 3 times. It was pretty amazing, and he went on to the RNC convention in Milwaukee, right? And since then, we got the news the next day that he chose J.D. Vance. And here's what I don't get. What is the big difference between them? Because I only think foreign policy. I don't think there's good news for Americans in either candidate. But foreign policy-wise, I don't see a huge difference. It's, okay, we're going to leave Ukraine to those fucking Europeans. That pretty much is almost the Biden position at this point. So it's not a huge difference. What is J.D. Vance? What I know about him, I know he was an anti-Trump guy, but he war with Iran, fuck China, a huge Zionist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And China is the big threat. And he was always below Moscow Marjorie, in criticizing the Ukraine aid. That's pretty much all I gathered about this guy in one day. I don't see why this is a blood fight. Because you don't trust Biden because he's a little bit unpredictable, because it looks like his policies with regard to me, which means with regard to the rest of the world, are not really all that different. What do you guys think?
I agree. I don't know. I wanted to ask Ian exactly how there's going to be a civil war, because Ben's right. There's not really two sides.
well, sure, I can get that. But I mean, to real quick answer Ben's question, I would say, and I think we've all talked about this on the show too, that if because I personally believe Trump does not have a chance, but there's also this negotiation between Trumpists and the mainstream Republican
yeah.
Party, and
Some
a
neocons.
very common way to effectively neuter a hardliner is give him an extremely down the middle of the road vice president.
That's Vance.
Which we were talking about. Maybe it would be DeSantis. I guess it's apparently not DeSantis. It's this guy who sounds like he did the whole Wailing Wall thing. There's pictures of Vance going there and showing what a good Zionist he is and all that. So yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what happened. Trump is trying to strike a deal with the mainstream Republicans so they don't just shoot him down. But yeah.
Yeah, so what's the huge difference now? I mean, I understand that the base that believes the MAGA, we're going to build roads again, we're going to have industry again. I don't think that's real. There's a real transformation possible in the American economy. So why does the other side hate him this much, that they say so much of the threat? Is it because he's got grudges against people in the Biden admin, people on the other side who screws him?
I say it's over-the-top rhetoric that is all about politics. It's all about winning an election, and it's totally divorced from any actual reality. And I think Greg is correct in that there is very little difference between the two parties. They both serve the same people. And I did not hear Ian answer Greg's question.
Oh, the Civil War. Well, I didn't want to derail the conversation, but yeah, I'm more than happy to answer that. So it's one. It's
like a culture war.
Well, yeah. So there's that distinction between the base and the party leadership itself. So there is very little difference. I mean, I know it's very popular to say, it's the left hand and the right hand. No, I mean, if you look at the Roman Civil War, I mean, there were aristocratic families just literally just butchering each other. They were the ownership class, but they were slaughtering each other. So this idea that rich people can't hate each other is just factually not true. But as far as the bases go, and I just compare it to the Soviet Union. What happened when the Soviet Union collapsed? Well, all these different groups of people, those old ethnic conflicts, like in Georgia, flared up. In Kazakhstan, in Tajikistan, in Russia itself, just these ethnic conflicts flared up.
Let's just add that wasn't just a natural emergence. I mean, a lot of that was
Right.
artificially pumped, you know.
Well,
Let's
it
just
was.
be
Yeah,
fair.
it wasn't. Well, I mean, and this isn't either. I mean, the tensions in the USA are not natural either. I mean, they're deliberately stoked as well. So yes.
Right, but to Ben's point, that was, billions and billions invested over a long time to break up the Soviet Union.
Oh yeah. Pretty much since 1945, the Cold War was all about that ultimate result. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Well, there's a lot too has been invested to polarize the USA as well, though. I mean, I would say
Yeah.
equal amount.
But not to facilitate an actual civil war. It's just
Right,
to
or
keep the people
separatist
divided.
I mean, one
But-
thing I'll say, that there was a lot of media, including, Euronews, which is the PR arm of this shit, this colonist entity here, and they got scared shitless, both by the assassination, which apparently has brought up his chances, like winning in 7 swing states, something like that, and by the pick of J.D. Vance. So the Ukraine stands, and not pretty much the European leaders like Fitz or Orban, but the typical puppets. They got terrified that this could be economic collapse for us. It could be military collapse. A lot of that shit came out. That's the one reason still, as an outsider, I would support Trump. I'm not a US voter and I'm not in the cult, but that is the one aspect of this whole thing I like.
So, Trump was actually in office at one point and he had 4 years and he really didn't do anything that outrageous.
Didn't the world end?
And I expect
Out
that
of the ordinary. Yeah. Go ahead,
another
Uncle.
I
think everything they do is outrageous.
Lots of outrageous things,
Right.
but nothing
Yeah,
out of the ordinary.
Right.
And
yeah,
I mean, it's not like the Democrats aren't going to be opposing everything he does in the next 4 years, and they're going to make sure that he can do very little. And this idea that there's not going to be any opposition to Trump, and everybody's just going to roll over and die, and he's going to be a dictator and put everybody that disagrees with him or who's not white in a death camp. It's hyperbole, and it's outrageous, and it's just designed to encourage people to vote against Trump, encourage people to fear Trump, to hate Trump, and then to I don't think they really want people to start trying to assassinate him, but of course that's going to happen, and that's what did happen. But another 4 years of Trump is going to be very, 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 very similar to what we just had under Biden. That's the reality.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, I'm not saying there isn't a difference. I think Ian made that point as well. There might be tactical differences here and there.
What I think is the major difference, there's a few domestic policy differences and things, which again won't go very far, but the big difference will be foreign policy and they'll switch. They're going to drop Ukraine. It does seem like Trump.
I mean, we have to remember too that Trump is not only restrained by the Democrats, but his own party. Right, 3 major foreign policy things that were interrupted: North Korea, Syria, Afghanistan, his own party.
I'm talking about domestic policy. Trump got rid of the Voting Rights Act. You know how hard the racist Lyndon Johnson, worked to get that pushed through with Martin Luther King, and then Roe v. Wade got overturned because he packed the court. What the fuck are you talking about? Those are divisive, so divisive, and so critically harmful to a majority of the U.S. population, African Americans and women, that have to be considered. There was huge differences between these two people domestically. And that's where we began this discussion.
So Biden, Kamala, 4 more years? What are you saying?
What's that?
Biden, Kamala, 4 more unburdened by what has been.
I'm saying when Trump comes back into power, you're going to get a lot more of that. You're going to get you want to joke about camps? You want to joke? They're refurbishing them right now. It's called Rex 84 nitrate. How many times do I have to repeat this on the show? The work.
But how come there was no camps the first 4 years?
There were.
Okay.
Under Biden, they got rebranded.
Go back to 1986.
Yeah.
Look,
so it wasn't a Trump thing.
Go back to the Japanese.
I get what you're saying. So I'm kind of downplaying the idea that Trump is, the Satan, and you're kind of taking the other side that no, he
he's going to be rough on the people that I live with. And he was rough on the people I live with. Okay? That's all I'm saying. COVID. Okay. Look at how many people died because Trump was talking about, well, just inject bleach or just drink bleach or it's not going to. I mean, I just watched the whole litany of quotes he had about COVID. Oh, it's going to die down on its own. Same with global warming. Oh, it's going to get cooler. What the fuck does that ignorant fat fuck know about climate change? Nothing. He's an idiot. And the idiot's in power now. I will say that's where J.D. Vance comes in. And I agree with Ian and I agree with Greg. He's there to be a kind of ameliorating. Move it back toward the old Republican Party. The Republican Party, I hate to say this because he wanted to nuke Vietnam, of Barry Goldwater or Mitt Romney or people like that. That's what J.D. Vance is there to do. And I think he was always there to do. I think he was the chosen one before the assassination attempt, because if the assassination attempt succeeded, then they would have put J.D. Vance up as their presidential nominee. But then it failed. But they went ahead and they chose J.D. Vance as the VP. Do you fucking think Donald Trump chose Vance? Fuck no. He can't choose what watermelon he wants to have that night.
On that note, we want to thank our other special guest, Alex, for joining us. Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened. You're a tad bit late, but we're glad to see you. And we're just talking mainly about Trump. What are your thoughts about? Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to respond to that real quick. And I tell people this: the Republican Party can fantasize. I don't know how much weight that idea of the Project 2025 is. But I mean, the reality is whether or not they want something that Republican Party is at this point, it's a hollow husk. I mean, sure, they can gerrymander some districts in Tennessee or something, but they have no political power anymore. I mean, the military, the alphabet agencies are completely in the pockets of the Democratic Party. And I'll bring up a specific example, a personal example of the military. So back in 2018, I was working in a public relations office, and I shot, some interviews of these Army training teams. And one of the guys I was interviewing casually brought up this list of regions they had helped train people for. And he just mentioned Syria. And then like an hour after I posted that video online, we got a call from ARCENT, Army Central Command, telling us to take down the video and remove the reference to Syria. At the time, I was like,
not yet.
Well, I mean, it's not a secret that we have people in Syria. We were completely, like my boss, like everybody was just surprised by that. Well, as it turned out, the reason why little old me got that phone call, or I should say my boss got that phone call, was because Trump had ordered a massive withdrawal from Syria. It's like, why do we have troops in Syria? It's stupid. So he ordered most of them to leave. What the DOD did is they directly lied to him. They admitted this afterwards. They lied to Trump and said they withdrew the troops, but actually didn't, and kept way beyond the authorized number he had given them. So when people talk about, I just remind people of this, when they talk about, Trump instituting martial law or becoming dictator, even if he wanted to do that, no one's going to listen to him. All of those institutions are completely in the Democratic camp. They've flushed out. All those people who might have been Trumpists have been flushed out. They've been flushed out.
I'm not even sure they're ideologically Republican or Democrat. This is what Putin calls the permanent state. They're stronger than the president, that's for sure. You're right.
Yes. But as soon as Trump
even when Trump appointed him, they don't listen to him.
But what Trump did was he changed his tune when he learned that they were going to be able to get oil and wheat out of eastern Syria.
And they still do that to this day. Yeah.
He changed his tune, just like on Venezuela. We have to why would we want to bother invading Venezuela? Pompeo goes, because they have a huge amount of oil. Oh, let's go invade Venezuela. That just proves what I'm saying. The guy's a fool.
Alex, we had a pretty momentous historic event, a couple of days ago or whenever it was. What are the biggest thoughts about that whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my first reaction was like, wow, what a show. America. It does appear that the permanent state wanted to take out Putin. They wanted to take out Trump. What was I going to say? Sorry, I'm a little short on sleep, and I thought we were starting in 10 minutes, but I guess we started 50 minutes ago.
My bad. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So what are my thoughts? I guess, right. The permanent state doesn't want Trump there. And that leads me to believe that, there's something there in terms of Trump's populism or opposition to empire, the manufacturing wing of Capital Main Street versus, finance imperialism. So I do think there is a conflict there, but, I think someone commented about Sanders at one point, does he have an organization there? And, I guess Trump did not have an organization his last term, but I would think the danger is, like, I don't know, maybe like Perón in Argentina or Huey Long, the more popular he is, perhaps, a movement can coalesce is the danger. Would Trump or the people around him, be able to organize a populist movement against financial imperialism? I don't know. I mean, what sort of organization does he have? I don't think we see evidence that there's like a state by state, organization of, Trump supporters, but that doesn't mean, it couldn't be organized. So I would think for the permanent state, the financial imperialists, that would be the danger.
Alex, as a finger in the air, because you weren't here before, but this is what I can't wrap my head around. Why is he such like a danger? I really don't understand, because he seems to go along with pretty much every foreign policy goal that the US has, either reflexively or a little bit later. But for some reason, he can't be trusted. Whether this was the lone gunman or the other story, it doesn't really matter. But for some, they wanted him in jail. They wanted him character assassinated. Something about him. Is it just the populism? What do you think? Because I really can't.
I think it is like what he represents socially. He what? I mean, I've heard stories, I guess. I don't know if it was when my father's still alive or he was from Queens. He was with the Bielski brother, or his father, Fred Trump, was with the Bielski brothers. They were building public housing in New York for the masses. I guess, mostly African American, from a certain point. I mean, I didn't grow up far from all of that, I grew up in Tarrytown, New York, and Yonkers was just down the way. And there was a guy, Nick.
Wait, you're trying to get to a point about the Trumps. Can we?
Right. So basically that social milieu is familiar. It's basically, small capitalist, and then that attracts like a lower middle class layer around them. And, also branches out to like working class and then also mafia elements. So I think there is, like a social base for Trumpism. And, he also attracts, like the petty bourgeoisie in America, Main Street in America, manufacturing capital. Boris Kagarlitsky actually wrote an article that was very good. It was back in, right after Trump got sworn in. Who's afraid of Donald Trump? And, he argued that, Trump represented socially the layer of, small capitalists. And, their interests were, pull back American bases from most of the world except the Western Hemisphere. So, more classically, American imperialism up until whatever it was, World War II, or, maybe before. And so he's therefore, he's in the Guzano camp against Cuba, against Venezuela, because that's kind of the Teddy Roosevelt, republic, not an empire, Pat Buchanan, Teddy Roosevelt. So I think he has that impulse, but the whole question is, A, does he have an organization, or maybe more relevantly, B, will the masses surge behind him such that populism, it's a threat, does it really become a reality of, okay, now we're going to really pull back from the rest of the world, focus on the Western Hemisphere, reindustrialize America, bring in, kind of social fascism, like Bismarck brought in healthcare to Germany, socialized medicine, that is, bring in socialized medicine to the U.S. In some form.
Do you see him carrying through this promise? Because I really don't. I understand that this is a good messaging, but you think he'll actually...
I mean, he doesn't even pretend to be bringing in healthcare anymore.
No,
I don't think.
Well, I think it depends, basically on the masses, that, America's a right-wing, what was I thinking the other day? It's a right-wing country, and or right-wing dominant country. And I think Trump's message certainly does have resonance. I mean, at this point, at least
I agree.
60+% of the voting, if not the overall public, maybe 60% of the voting public. So, in a revolution, I mean, the Cuban Revolution, that was like 4 different vectors of Cuban society coming together. It's there's a lot of spontaneity. Now, of course, you're talking intellectuals with guerrillas. Intellectuals turn guerrillas with workers.
I don't think of Trump as a Fidel character, but Carter has been almost literally dying to say something.
Yeah, yes. Look, Trump doesn't do anything. He's the front man. There are Trump does. If you want to call it a Trump organization, there are Trump organizations. ALEC, the people that Bannon puts, the groups that Bannon put together, all these ninnies sitting on city council who are banning children's books and that kind of shit. That organization exists. It does. And it's harming people now. It's getting people killed. Who's
it getting killed?
It's getting people. Yes, transgender people. Do you know how much that has gone up? It's gone up. Murders of transgender people are through the fucking roof. Okay? So don't tell me. And that's part of the organization. It's an organization of that grassroots level, a true grassroots level, and the grassroots are a bunch of idiots and a bunch of ninnies and a bunch of know-nothings and a bunch of crude people.
You need working class people.
I would like to present, a perspective on the Trump phenomenon. Obviously, there is an entrenched ruling class establishment, and people are pretty sick of them and their two-party system, the lack of accountability, the hypocrisy, etc.
No, they're sick. They're sick of their toleration.
Can I
talk? Sick of their toleration.
So Trump pretends right? He sells himself as being in opposition to this ruling establishment that everybody hates. But the problem for Trump is he's got to pretend that he's this champion of the working class who will get rid of this corrupt oligarchy and drain the swamp. But he's got to sell this he's selling this to a people that think communism is bad and actual revolutionaries are bad people. So he's got a difficulty selling this idea that he's going to champion, the masses, get rid of this corrupt establishment, drain the swamp, and help everybody. But he doesn't realize that what he's saying is exactly what Mao did, exactly what Lenin did, exactly what Castro did, because these are all people that the people he's trying to sell this to think are bad. So it's just kind of a weird conundrum. It's kind of a bit of a farce. But I mean, that's what's going on to a great extent. Is he's selling himself as this champion of the people.
Billy Bob is not saying this is real. He's saying this is his campaign. This is his messaging. It's successful.
Right.
Nobody's saying this is what.
Let me say.
I think it's half
where
real,
you're
though.
coming from, Billy Bob, but the United States is not at the level of class struggle yet. They're still at the level of bigots and bigotry and ignorance. Class struggle takes intelligence. It takes organization.
Carlo, I think I spoke to that when I acknowledged that the masses think that actual revolutionaries are bad people. So Trump has a problem on his hands to present himself as a revolutionary while at the same time denouncing socialism, communism, and actual existing revolutionaries.
It's a
farce. It's a fucking farce.
They don't think at all. They don't think at all.
No, they do think, Carlo. They think socialism is bad. Hello. Yeah. They think that they think that Lenin and Castro were evil people.
Look up the word thought. Look it up. It involves reflection. You think people reflect?
Carlo,
I'll give you one example again of that guy that this comedian interviewed with about Trump, and the guy began by saying, "I can't feed my family anymore. I'm a Trumper because I can't feed my family." And then the comedian said, "Well, how much Trump paraphernalia are you wearing?" And he goes, "About $2,000. It cost me about $2,000." So the motherfucker, he's got $2,000 worth of Trump shit on his body, but he can't feed his family. It's just like these fuckers. Oh, I can't feed my family, but I have 30 automatic rifles.
Working class people are dumb. I get
30 automatic rifles cost? It costs like $45,000. Well, fucking feed your family by selling some of your rifles, you fucking moron.
All right, Carlo. Thank you.
I don't think anybody called Trump a revolutionary. At least if that's the message, I'm not on board. Fuck no.
I think the regime just and it is a regime. We can call it a regime at this point. Every regime needs a Goldstein, like in 1984. You need that face you can put up on the viewer screen and say, this is the person who's going to hurt you and eat your babies. And, everybody hates him. And if you notice, like if you look at the media, if you look on what people say on Facebook and Twitter, they reflexively lump external enemies with internal enemies. If you notice that, it's like, Trump, Putin, China are all working together. President Xi and Putin and Trump are all working together to hurt America. And, it's very interesting. It's this ultra McCarthyism that the Democrats have completely, where McCarthy is saying there's this bad Stalin guy. Wow. Then we have these internal fifth column, these traitors in American society. It's the same thing. Democrats just adopted.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is. How is it not the same thing? How is it not literally the same thing?
Roy Cohn, McCarthy's right-hand man, was Trump's mentor. He raised Trump.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
that's a completely different different universe.
Well, it's McCarthyism of they're both trying to play to their bases, but the Democrats are doing it worse because they've just been ruling for the last 30 years at least, and the contradictions have piled up, and their social base is basically international financial capital, and you can't square that with helping people domestically. So Trumpism, it's populism, it's phony to a large extent, and that was a great point about also. I think, I don't know, years ago, I read or was told, Trump was there's two brothers. There's Donald Trump and then his brother. Donald Trump is the front guy, and his brother was the detail guy, right? And so, sure, Donald Trump. I mean, I met, still am meeting people like that in Chicago on the regular. Basically the flim flam, the carnival barker. That's Trump. And I'm sure, Huey Long was a showman too, but, Huey Newton was named after Huey Long, right? That was pointed out to me by an Occupy activist from Nolens. It was hilarious and crazy, but, the Long brothers ended up taxing the oil companies, I believe it was, also setting up the state hospital system, the state highway system, the state educational system. After Huey Long was assassinated, his brother was committed to a mental institution. I was told by this Occupy activist, because he was like, "Hey, why don't we desegregate the schools of Louisiana? I think that'd be a great idea." Yeah, and the ruling class of Louisiana in whatever 1950 or whatever it was, or 1940 some odd, they freaked out. They were like, "You're nuts!" And they clapped him in the nut house. So there's I think Caleb Maupin also has pointed out that there are different historical strands, and in McCarthyism even, that was the boot came down on McCarthyism even after the Red Purge. At a certain point, the liberals basically purged McCarthy because he was, or whatever wing of the Republicans or ruling class, whatever. But McCarthy was becoming kind of populist and kind of.
He went after the army. That's the army
that's really, always too much.
Yeah, that's
too much. He tried to purge the army, and they just.
Yeah, but that was this, I think, the superficial, but there was also an element of McCarthyism, like the John Bircherism, I think, which was also like anti-establishment, pro-worker. Yeah, I had an Uncle Jim in Detroit. He became who is the guy, the populist, racist guy who got shot? Man, Carla would remember. Wallace, yeah, he was a Wallace supporter, because my Uncle Jim was like, he's for the working man, the working white man, and I had a buddy at work. He was hilarious. He was whatever. Was he a driver? Yeah, driver, city of Chicago. We both were drivers, and he says to me one day, he's like, "Yeah, I'm for Bernie Sanders, but they, meaning Democrat Party establishment, etc., won't let him." Be the candidate, so I guess I have to settle for the lesser evil, Trump, because no worker in their right mind is going to vote for Hillary Clinton because they passed NAFTA. Like Hillary Clinton, his logic was, and he was like, "Yeah, my brother and I, we were hardcore Wallace supporters back in the day. And then we got really mad at Wallace because he went soft on segregation. We didn't hold it against him or nothing that, we didn't want to see him get shot. But, we were mad that, whatever, Wallace somehow went soft. But they were populist, racist, and he was still racist, but he was a Bernie supporter. A buddy of mine also came up as a racist in the 70s, but ended up supporting what was her name, Carol Moseley Braun, against Daley or whoever she was going to run against. And he was like, yeah, he was on the northwest side of Chicago, and he said to me one day, well, I'm going to be the precinct captain in my neighborhood, the Mafia Northwest Side neighborhood, for Carol Moseley Braun, because basically she's black. We're working for the city, and basically she's going to hire a bunch of, politely said, she's going to hire a bunch of blacks, and they're going to be under us. They're going to protect us in seniority, and they're going to be what? They're going to protect the pension fund. So therefore, I'm supporting the first black woman, corrupt, first black woman mayor of Chicago. Classic, like Saul Alinsky sort of phenomenon. And this other buddy of mine, he was like, Trump's the lesser evil to Bernie, and Hillary Clinton is the absolute evil because she's anti-worker, and Daley is more evil than Carol Moseley Braun. Yeah.
Alex, succinctly, what is it that the ruling establishment, why do they not really want Trump? Like, why has there been this antipathy towards Trump? And that's assuming you think there is. And I know we have just some disagreement, but I'd like to go around the panel and get a succinct answer to
anti-social fascism. Empire, their slogan is empire, not a republic. Trump's slogan, I think, is a republic, not an empire. And I think there's something there. There's a there with Trump. He's a carnival barker. He's the front guy, but he's got his brother or whoever it is today. I don't know if his brother's still alive, but there are forces like, I guess, Bannon, behind him. The angry Main Street petty bourgeois, upper working class, Rust Belt working class, perhaps. Too, some of my cousins in Michigan, they're
succinct. We know you have a huge family and a wealth of acquaintances. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's the American side then. Yeah, on the Midwest side, the Jewish coastal side, probably most of them are pro-empire, not a republic. At this point,
Greg, would you agree with that kind of conceptualization where real broad categories of differences between the establishment consensus and the minority faction that supports Trump? Can you describe it like maybe a nationalism versus a globalism, or is that not something?
I think in the base there's something to it, but when we have a track record of Trump being in power and he works for big finance, big oil, military-industrial complex, I don't.
So, do you see any genuine antipathy towards Trump, Greg? Do you see that, or do you not agree that that exists? Do you perceive that there's a legitimate hatred and distrust of Trump, that they don't want him in power by the establishment consensus, or is that not something?
Yeah, although I also think there's a dual purpose, that he was the vehicle for war propaganda against Russia. Primarily, that was the purpose of Russiagate, in my view. There was never anything to it, but he's been that. And continues.
So they just like they were opportunistically seizing on Trump to push this anti-Russian stuff.
Yeah, because he wasn't in favor of war.
But it really didn't have very much to do with Trump himself. It more had to do with
the domestic
trying to use Trump to convince the people that Russia is bad. Ian, what do you think? Notice I'm skipping Carlo because we know what Carlo thinks.
Well, I think it's what I said. We need. The establishment needs a Goldstein. They need that big internal enemy. I think Trump, actually, it's not even I think he is. It's fact at this point. Trump is very politically isolated. I mean, yes, he has a lot of popular support because he's viral. He goes viral. He has lots of grassroots support, but politically he's very isolated. And after he left office the first time, I mean, the people who were loyal to him were kicked out or put in jail or just forced out of the system. He doesn't really have any allies. I mean, even just the fact his VP pick is someone who is previously hostile to him just kind of proves that he has no real allies. He has no faithful partners in crime, so to speak.
So why do they not want him? Why do they oppose him? In such a virulent way.
True that I think it's absolutely a true statement that he's a loose cannon. That Trump is in it for Trump. He says these populist things because that's what's popular. Because right now you have the Republican base is ignored and hated by both sides. You know, they're they are the truly most shit on group in the USA. But he comes up and says, "Hey, I care about your needs. I'm listening to you," and repeats these talking points, which are very popular, but no one else in Washington says. So, of course, at the grassroots level, he's popular, but it goes against the program. So,
yeah, I'm with Ian 100% on this one. His popular streak, there's never really much real to that. But, you know, Carlo mentioned Syria, and we're there for the oil. Of course, we're taking the oil. That's the shit you're not supposed to say. Just a statement like that can cause chaos when you try to be the legitimate good guy, the policeman of the world. And let's not forget the moment we're in. There's an economic crisis brewing, a crisis of legitimacy in the US. I mean, it looks like a decaying society. Every week there's a bridge or a collapsing, rail line derailing. It's a really dire moment and about to get a humiliating defeat in Ukraine. I think that's getting clearer and clearer by every week. And that's when they can't have, I'm going to stick with Mark Sloboda on this, the chaos bomb in the White House. They need someone pliable. I think that's the only thing. I don't think it has anything to... his messaging is on point, you know, republic, not empire. I'm going to pull back and make America great again. That's what sounds good to these petit bourgeois, some lumpen, some working class elements who've been screwed for 20, 30 years. They got the short end of the stick. They feel it. They don't know why. So they're going to get 1950s nostalgia, white picket fences, and mowing the lawn. And that's what Trump promises via... well, kind of like a lightning rod candidate. So I don't think it's real, but the threat is he's erratic, he's uncontrollable. And one day he might decide, I'm going to make peace some way, I don't know, somewhere where there isn't. It was not approved. You know, that's my quick take.
And I would say just to respond to that too. I mean, they're not going, and that's why I'm adamant that Trump is not going to win, because they can't at this point afford a 4-year break. Because I do think that his 2016 election was unexpected, was a chaos bomb, and that resulted in a 4-year break. He was screwing up.
Alex, but he's back.
He was oops, he's gone. Oh, there he is. He was. He derailed plans. I think they wanted to get the Ukraine project kicked off much earlier. He was screwing around. And the Syria example, you know, the military just essentially ignoring his instructions, just kind of shows the deep state does what they want to. But the fact is that Afghanistan, Biden could have, and Congress could have reversed the Biden withdrawal if they wanted to. They didn't, which means that was an institutional decision to withdraw from Afghanistan, because they could have reversed it. They didn't. They went through it, which means they wanted to leave Afghanistan, whether or not Trump was in office. But right now, they can't afford to have Trump in office another 4 years. I just don't think he's going. I mean, there's some remote possibility that they might make a deal with him and he's allowed to win, but I think it's that odds of that are very remote.
So I mean, I agree largely with everything everyone's saying here, and I'm going to give Carlo a chance to respond because I know he's jumping out of his chair. But the context within which the West is facing, you know, all these threats to their hegemony across the planet makes it absolutely imperative for them to have a figurehead that is on board with, you know, the imperial consensus. And so they'd rather have a corpse than somebody they don't trust, they can't control, that says things that they don't like. Even though all this is true, despite the fact that the president doesn't have very much power, right? The president can be overruled. He's literally a figurehead, but it's tough when that figurehead is not part of the ruling, you know, the ruling establishment, because it's like a loose cannon. They're at odds. They really need that to work together to completely, you know, fulfill their strategy of, you know, number one, lying to the American people and getting them on board with what's really going on and with their strategy and agenda for dealing with it, right? And so we know that is like, you know, dealing with these threats to U.S. Western imperialism, which is Russia, which is China, which is Iran, Venezuela to a lesser extent. But how are we going to come against these things? We need to have a consensus. We need to work together. The entire class, the entire Western world has to be on the same page, and to have the biggest power and the biggest, most high-profile person, supposedly controlling and governing that power really has to be on board. And so Trump is just not the man for the job, and that just kind of explains this overwhelming antipathy against him. Even though, he does have a minority of support, even within the ruling class, among billionaires and the elites. I don't know. That's kind of what I see. Carlo, your thoughts?
I in my lifetime, I've seen what a puppet show the presidency is.
Yes.
And now I'm seeing something I never thought I'd see. Biden, who's a living corpse.
Yeah, drugged up zombie.
They're trying to put this guy in office. It's so cruel in a lot of ways. I'm an old man. I know what I'm losing. I know what my faculties are going, when my faculties are going. And I'm troubled by it. I can't imagine the cruelty of taking this guy and put up. I've seen stupid presidents. I mean, I grew up, I was a kid, very little kid, during the Truman administration. He was so stupid. He needed Jimmy Burns, his NSA advisor, walking him around all the time. I was with the Bushes. I saw Reagan shitting his pants. I've seen it all. And that's. But what I wanted to say was, this is an example of what I'm talking about. How Trump has no say in things, but he does have a powerful group of people behind him, as a figurehead, if he does the right thing. He just nominated, I can't remember the guy's name, he just took on board somebody into his presidential platform, his presidential entourage. And you know who the guy was a high-powered lawyer previously for Peter Thiel, the billionaire, the huge billionaire. So there's billions of money behind him. The Koch brothers. We had Tony Montero kids on, and they pointed out to me quite rightly that the Koch brothers were for Nikki Haley at that time. And what I should have told them is the Koch brothers will be for whoever they get a good deal from. So Trump says, if you give me $1 billion, oil people, I will do your bidding. Now, that's not him talking. That's the people behind him that want to, gain from that. Want to get a lot of money from that, basically. And so the Koch brothers haven't completely switched because Nikki Haley's out of it, but they've softened their view toward Trump because that's where the money is, and it has nothing to do ultimately with Donald Trump. He doesn't come up with the ideas. He doesn't. Anyway, and one anecdote. I was approached by the John Birch Society to put out a magazine for young people. You can believe that, because of a newspaper article I appeared in years ago, and it was really, it ended up being a hatchet job on me. But that's on me. I'm just stupid. I didn't realize what the mainstream press would do to me. But they approached me because they mistook the article. And the discussion I had over one of the best lunches I've ever had in my life with the guy from the John Birch Society was so racist and so vile that it turned my stomach. I almost threw up my lunch when I
Did you expect anything else from a member of the John Birch Society?
No, but they were offering me a lot of money, and I didn't have any money.
Hey, I'll sell out for the right price.
Yeah, right. I mean, I was there, I was down with it. It was vile.
Alex, you were trying to get in?
No, I actually went. That's not true. I just went there because I wanted to hear it out, and I wanted to get the anecdote, the experience. It's just like when we had the television show. People go, well, how are you doing this? How are you managing to make these inroads in your area? Well, I would tell them, we're in Washington, D.C. All we have to do is walk a tape around to all the community access stations, and we're basically competing with the major media in Washington, D.C., because there's community access in every county around Washington and in Washington itself. So all you have to do is our left-wing program, our far left-wing program, believe me, and give them and get people to walk a tape around to give to their community access cable. That was it. That's why we're making inroads. If we were in resume speed Iowa, it wouldn't have made any impact. Nobody would have given a shit. But it was DC, and so people were going, "Wow, this is kind of interesting." It's the forebear of what we're doing now, is what it was. So, or more likely, the people who put an article up and read it and then comment on it. Well, we read articles primarily from the
So JD Vance. Well, Alex, did you want to say something? Or a while ago you were trying to get in, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah, thanks. Well, yeah, I was going to ask exactly JD Vance. Who is he? Who does he or what does he represent? I saw the kind of promotional of him writing. I think he was the one who wrote the song, right? That populist song. And my other question is, who is below Trump? I don't really, if anyone has done an analysis of, are there organizations below Trump? Not to say that he's Fidel Castro, but in the Cuban Revolution, there were 4 different movements that came together. And I would think if you looked at Huey Long, I don't know, it's, with a showman like Long or a showman like Trump, there's a lot, there's phoniness involved and there's misdirection involved. And I think part of why, the dominant wing of the ruling class hates Trump is that he's misdirecting against them, for his own faction of the ruling class. But the question is, like, how real is his organization, and can he really mobilize organizationally and bring some sort of social fascism, or to the U.S. or maybe
he doesn't want to.
Or are there groups? I don't know that that's true. I think he comes from what was it? Kagerlitsky again writes about, or someone was commenting, Trump and what he represents. There are the small bourgeoisie, the billionaires, like $3-4 billion fortunes, not $300 billion fortunes. They're domestic, and they want the chumbolones, as John Cass used to put it in Chicago, to have quarters in their pockets to go to the casinos. And he was talking about highway projects. I think socialized medicine at one point. He threw out the idea of what is it, socialized education, or maybe even abolishing student debt. And these don't come out of nowhere. I think, maybe he's free associating, but I don't necessarily think he is, but there's some sort of social basis. Being determines consciousness, right? As Marx said. And I think his being is that, poor rich man, poor tycoon, and they represent, it was like Daley versus Emmanuel in Chicago. Daley represented local Chicago real estate interests to a large extent. Emmanuel represented like Hollywood money, but also transnational or more international money, so there was still a kind of affection almost for Richard M. Daley among, or whatever, I don't know, affection, maybe that's the wrong word, maybe it isn't, but he represented Chicago more than Rahm Emanuel did. And similarly, I think Trump does represent, and I was just going to say with Oscar M., it recalls to Oscar M. Ringer wrote a book, a small booklet about, I think it was the true history of America or something. I can't remember. I used to have copies of it like 30 years ago. But he was like the German American socialist Mark Twain, and he analyzed in satirically the U.S. society or U.S. government, modeled after the monarchy or whatever. The president was a king, the Supreme Court was the the British equivalent historically, whatever that was. The House of Lords is the Senate, etc. But I would say, the president in America is the king, but he's also kind of a combination of the king, a tribune of the people, and a carnival barker. So, my question is, in all of that, how much is he an actual tribune? That is, how much of a base does he have, and thus a reality of some sort of populism, some sort of social fascism, versus just simply being a carnival barker for, and I wouldn't even say, the ruling class is split into different factions. And like as Mark said, the capitalist government is what is it? The committee of the executive of the bourgeoisie. Right. But Trump represents a different faction of that, and I think that's objectively good for the masses in America. But it's a real question, then, is he an actual tribune? To what extent is he an actual tribune? To what extent is he a carnival barker? Because that's very American too, right? Is phoniness, is fakery, is
Okay, I'm going to read a quote, and I want you guys to tell me who said this. This will be fun for me. The President of the United States is a transient official in regard of the warfare conglomerate. His assignment is to act as master of ceremonies in the awarding of posthumous medals, to serve when needed as a salesman for the military hardware manufacturers, and to speak as often as possible about the nation's desire for peace. He is not free to trespass on the preserve of the war interest, nor even to acknowledge that such an organism exists. Mm-hmm. Who said that?
Sounds like Lenin, but that sounds early to me.
No. Smedley Butler or Henry Kissinger.
This is fun for me. Butler. It's Jim Garrison, who investigated the JFK assassination. He was really spot on. He had some great insights. I've got a ton of quotes about this. He says that the president is free to put any color of drapes he wants in the White House, and that's about it.
Well, but that was also during the early 60s. That was the heyday or the late blossom heading into tuberculosis of American empire. America was firmly in the saddle, I guess, among its Western European allies, et cetera. And, China was struggling against imperialism. It was a very poor country. Now, though, as Lenin said, a crisis occurs when the rulers are no longer willing to rule, right? Or able. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you look at Joe Biden, he's a living symbol of the American ruling class not being able to, at a certain level, not being able to go on ruling. And I think, that shows there's an open split. I think, the permanent state, wants to continue, the American imperial project, but the American, like you can see, Russia and China, Africa, et cetera, are challenging that now. And, militarily, and economically, American or domestically, economically, the contradictions are at such a level now that, I think Trump does represent something real. He represents the desire of a certain faction of the American ruling class. Like, they're like, oh shit, we've got to pull back, and we've got to, firm up our own base at home, or else, things are going to be so chaotic, we could face, I don't know, a decline at least, if not a collapse. And I think Trump may be, in a way, the smart money to address that crisis. like Bismarck brought in Social Security, I think, and didn't he bring in socialized medicine, socialized education, social fascism to stabilize things domestically. I think in the phase of decline, it's kind of the opposite of Cecil Rhodes' strategy of expand internationally. Now you want to, shrink back to your own base, the Western Hemisphere. What was that? Manifest Destiny. That was, basically to contain ourselves or to start with the base. The Western.
I think there's definitely something to Trump's anti-globalist rhetoric, right? I think there is a difference in their approach to foreign affairs, and to say that Trump is not on board with the globalist agenda, I think is true, because I think he sees things differently fundamentally. He doesn't see that we have an alliance with Western Europe, Asia, and Japan. He kind of sees everybody as a potential rival or a potential partner, depending on how it benefits us. And I think that sells way better with the public than the globalism about how we have to give support Western Europe. We have to spend all this money to have our bases there, and the people think that is a waste. Like, how come we're not getting money? How come Germany isn't flooding us with goods and loot because we're protecting them? We have our troops there, and that's the kind of populism that Trump panders to. But I think there's definitely a different kind of approach to foreign policy, and that's not to say that Trump's approach is more moral, but you can see that it plays much better with the working class people that don't really understand the reality of things.
Yeah, but Germany is a good example. It's a great example because the U.S. blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, and now Germany is paying the U.S. 5 times what it used to pay for its natural gas. So U.S. elites are now raking in the dough from a crippled Germany that's losing its industrial base on a daily basis.
Yeah, so not only are they buying our exorbitantly priced natural gas, but they're sending their industries here too, because the industries can't survive there with those high energy costs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and we have to point out
he doesn't
Trump
go that far. He doesn't mention that. That would be truly revolutionary. That would be truly interesting as a political discussion. I mean, for him to even go that far, it's an obvious truth. You can put it up. You can put the figures up from even the U.S. Department of Commerce that shows that demonstrates that.
Greg, what were you going to say?
Yeah, that Trump began to send lethal aid to Ukraine and ramped up the trade war and rhetoric against China. I don't buy that he's going to pull back on the empire. He may not realize the empire's there fully, which, I think we can see with his talk about NATO, but
institutionally, just think about it. Institutionally, is the United States capable of just drawing back and becoming a manufacturing power all of its own, abandon everybody else? That's one thing he can't do, the US. And Trump, institutionally, not because of the presidency, but because he's a real estate billionaire. As Janet Yellen warned like a couple of days ago, there's real worries about the dollar dominance. If that goes away, he's done. And he may not be able to do, even if he has like a sincere wish to do this, and it's not just rhetoric. I have doubts about that. He may not be able to do anything like what he.
So, Greg, I mean, would you argue then that Trump's anti-globalist rhetoric, where he says, our friends in Europe aren't really our friends because they're taking advantage of us, and where he says Russia isn't really our enemy, like there's no reason we should be at war with them. You don't think that there's a there?
There may be, but when he was in power, there wasn't. And as we're saying, he may think it won't do it, can't do it.
But that might get back to our Jim Garrison quote, where the president just doesn't have any power.
Right.
All they can do is say things.
Yeah, I think I have to push back on what Alex is saying. If Trump is offering anything for the ruling class domestically, it's fascism, right? Xenophobia, law and order crackdown. That's the appeal he has. I don't hear the social democracy. I don't hear healthcare. I don't hear housing. Biden just, I think, announced rent controls or proposal. Trump's not doing that. Neither of them mean it, but Trump doesn't even have his fake health care plan this time.
Well, I think
but
we're being a little
he says he's going to help everyone out, Greg.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, we're going to have big industrial cities again. That's basically it. It's not policy. It's rhetoric.
There's a good example of that in real time, and that's the border with Mexico. I mean, I don't know what you think of Biden's plans, his two plans, but it was the Republicans and under the rubric of a Trump command that scuttled those two plans to take control of the border. So they said they did. Trump literally said, "I don't want that bill to pass because it might have an effect on reducing the number of immigrants and sorting out the process till it makes more sense. So that it makes more sense."
If that bill passed, if that bill was allowed to pass, it was asking, which ironically, which we've talked about on this show, it happens anyway. That bill was asking Republicans to make huge concessions on Ukraine and get nothing in return. Because that bill, if you actually look at it, doesn't control the border. It just gives the Democrats the majority. Democrats are going to have $60 billion
thing. Yes, right. But that's not what Trump said. Trump said, "Don't pass that bill because it might have a good effect on reducing immigration." That's what he said.
I don't think he said that.
He said.
I hate to change the subject, but I want to pursue I have an axe to grind a little bit based on our last show, and I want to put Ian on the spot a little bit.
Oh, okay, go for it.
We were talking, so I was kind of surprised. I know we were talking about how my belief, at least, that, Russia is a stepping stone. And once Russia has been Yugoslaviaed and Balkanized, then that'll open up the front against China. And that, Russia is a stepping stone to China, and Russia and China both know this. It's so obvious that if China allows Russia to collapse, that China's next. And the same thing's gonna happen. And so it's in China's best interest to support Russia and keep Russia from, succumbing to being taken over by a comprador government, whatever. So no, I was wanting to just hear Ian's, if, for instance, the United States succeeded, the West succeeded in balkanizing Russia, do you think they're going to stop there and that China doesn't have anything to worry about? That can't be. I don't want to put an argument in your mouth, but you were saying that you don't think Russia is a stepping stone to China. I'm interested in hearing you.
No, and I think I mentioned that, and I'll actually mostly just repeat what I said then. There's this, which, and I have, hardcore, and pro-Ukraine, anti-Russian people say that, even they'll say this, China's the real threat to the USA. I don't see that at all. I think Russia is the primary threat, and China is at most an economic threat. It's because China has, as I said actually in the last show too, the only way they could even come to blows is if China tries to militarily resolve the Taiwan situation, which they haven't. And as of right now, the USA has not. If the USA wanted a war over Taiwan, the first step would be to reverse the one China policy. Right now, the USA at least pays lip service to the one China policy. That's not changed. That still has not changed.
So what makes Russia the threat, and what makes China not a big threat?
Well, because Russia, in the end, it was Russia that resorted to military force. Because both, and I'd say both China and Russia are in a similar boat, that the USA has been pushing, and it's like give an inch, take a mile mentality. Oh, he gave me what I wanted, so I'm just going to keep taking more. Eventually, Russia said, no, that's enough, and just drew the line. And
so we have an empire. We have an empire that's dedicated to conquest and overthrowing every country that doesn't bow the knee and become a vassal, right? And so we want to vassalize all those countries that are resisting and that demand their own sovereignty. So, and it's the West. The West has decided the battle. The West decides where the battle will be fought and when the battle will be fought, and they chose to fight the battle with Russia first. And that was the appropriate agenda and the appropriate schedule to further their quest for global domination and to subdue every society, every government to the will of the Western capitalists. So they chose to start in Ukraine. They chose not to start in Taiwan. But it seems like when you talk about Russia being the bigger threat, it's just confusing to me because I mean the Russia doesn't threaten the West, China doesn't threaten the West. What they threaten is a lack of vassalage. Yeah.
Look at it in evolutionary terms. So when you look at an ecosystem, your biggest threat isn't like if you're let's say you're a tiger in an ecosystem in the jungle, your biggest threat is not, a snake or a rat or a bird. It's usually another tiger. It's usually someone that's in the same niche, or not necessarily a tiger, maybe species similar to tigers. You're a Homo sapien. Your biggest threat is not tigers or lions or bears. It's other Homo sapiens. So not to take that analogy too literally, I don't want to get into some sort of weird race theory thing, but because that's not what I mean. What I mean is that Russia is in that cultural niche. It's a European country with a European culture, and it's in that, and that makes it more of a threat to other European countries. That's always been European politics.
What is the threat? What's the threat that
1945?
The biggest threat to a European country is another European country. It's always been Germany and France and Russia and the British.
I mean, that Russia's going to invade and take over, or what's the threat? Like, what are they worried about that precipitated their attack against it? Like, what are they worried about?
The threat of a bad example, as Noam Chomsky said.
Okay.
Yes.
And also, but beyond that slogan, living here, I've been here maybe cumulatively a year. You see, and you look at the history of Russia, the last 100 years and before. A comrade here, he was a church sexton, and he's a communist Orthodox Russian, religious, not religious, but he's culturally Orthodox. So he's very deeply, he's actually Western Ukrainian and Cossack, right? And he came from Siberia. So deeply Russian. And he was saying to me, actually, the core of Russian, part of the core of Russian society was like what became knights, like the military retinue, who were also peasants. So Russia has always from, long ago had a kind of tradition of, military, the protection of, whatever the land here. But then, also the October Revolution. People say to me, my apartment mate says, "Oh, it's just a birthmark." Well, it's a birthmark that, basically it's 400% less shitty here. The trash got taken out here in Petrograd 100 years ago, where, all indicators in terms of cost of living, crime, everything, it's much more stable here. It's much more fair here. Massive public housing here. Nothing like what exists in the USA, especially. There's a legacy of that revolution that lives on, even more so in Belarus. So that is a threat. That's the threat of the bad example. Just like Trump is a threat. He's the rabble. He represents on a certain level, I think, the rabble, and the Russians also represent the rabble. You look at the Russians here, and people like Trump or people in Chicago that I work with, they love this. This is like Bridgeport in Chicago.
So the Russian government wanted to maintain good relationships with the West. The Russian government wanted to trade and prosper and live throughout the rest of eternity in that way as brothers, as part of as sovereign, but definitely living in peace and mutual prosperity with the West. China wants the exact same thing. So that's why it's tough for me to understand what the threat is.
You're right. They're prey.
If you look at I
agree with that. That's my point. They're the prey from the empire, and so the empire doesn't feel threatened.
Right.
I mean, I don't know.
They had to work really hard.
Totally subjugate. When the Nazis originally tried to disintegrate them, they slaughtered the Nazis pretty much single-handedly.
Mm-hmm.
That's unforgivable.
If Germany and Russia ever had a proper economic union, that would right there make them the most powerful economic bloc on earth. More powerful than China, more powerful than the USA. And that's been going back to, if you look at the Holy Alliance, which they were trying to cobble together after the Napoleonic Wars. That was a threat to the British Empire because Germany and Russia by themselves are very strong. But if you combined them, that would solve the historical problems Germany had
But Ian, doesn't Russia and China represent an even bigger bloc than Russia and Germany would?
Well, I think whether we like it or not, it's the main center of gravity of opposition to the rules-based world order, as they like to call it, is Russia. That is the center of gravity. And I will say, Russians do culturally have, and I wouldn't even say it's a bad thing, they do have a bit of a, I would even go so far as to call it a bit of a savior complex. They have these big ideas that they, I don't mean like conquer. Yeah, they want to go to Africa and
storm the gates of heaven, set the world on fire. Yeah,
well, not set the world on fire, but
the Bolsheviks. That was a slogan.
Yeah, well, I'd say the idea of actually bringing global communism died with Trotsky's axe pick in the back of the head. But I would say Germany and Russia are much closer than China and Russia. So when Germany backed out of that economic union that Putin and his team basically spent their entire time in office trying to put together, that was, I would go so far as to say, it was more disappointing than the Sino-Soviet split.
The October Revolution was predicated on the Western European communists and revolutionaries coming to the aid and alliance with the Soviet Republic. And the story is Lenin danced in the snow the day after or the day of when the October Revolution survived, as long as the Paris Commune. So that was. And before that, Peter the Great, he was looking towards Europe also, of course. But that alliance with Germany. But the difference is, Lenin also said it is necessary to have a United Socialist States of Europe, but a United Capitalist States of Europe will be a monstrosity. And that's the EU. That's the EU. And that's the fundamental, I think, historical contradiction we're facing, right? And that's the threat that Russia still poses, because you have the masses here and they're kind of Frankensteinian in their thinking, because, they want the basics, food, clothing, shelter to be socialized. And Putin agrees with that, I'm told. And the ruling class here agrees with that. Whereas in the West, it's all, like to be sold like a sausage, F the masses. We don't care about domestic. And I think Trump and his faction too, they care about the domestic too. That's why they love Russia. But the problem, the Frankensteinian contradiction, the problem there is that you have now two capitalist countries, Germany and Russia. Putin and the Russian ruling class were trying to unite with Germany, but on a capitalist basis, which, like a Turkish communist comrade's comment, you can't do that. you can't truly represent the nation as a capitalist, because the masses, in fact, are really socialist. You know, the needs and wants of the masses are not to be alienated, not to go to a bullshit job or a shitty job, to have meaning in life, to have greater meaning in life, you know, as well as the basics.
I think maybe succinctly, maybe elaborate on that, because it seems like Russians at the grassroots level were very excited to have this economic prosperity with Germany.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
So saying, I think it goes a little deeper than whether it's capitalist or communist. It's just it's deeper than the economic system at stake here.
Well,
because
yeah, a lot of Russians.
The conflict predates communism. This goes back at least to the 19th century, probably actually a bit earlier than that.
So, Ian, your perspective is very interesting, and I am trying to understand it better before I destroy it. I'm just teasing.
Oh, okay.
But no, I mean, I'm trying to figure out where it's coming from, because, like, to me, it's just so obvious that you have a global empire that is unhappy with anyone that's not a vassal. And, you know, China is definitely not a vassal. Russia is definitely not a vassal. But China is the bigger threat, at least economically, because it's displacing Western imperialism. It's displacing Western economic power. It's displacing the dollar. It's displacing their Bretton Woods system. And so they realize they have to do something. And their first thing they got to do is take out, you know, Yeah, I mean, in their minds, I mean, at least with their rhetoric, you know, Russia is always the spoken of as the weaker of the powers, the lower hanging fruit. We're going to take care of. We're going to turn the rubble to ruble, and you know, we're going to destroy them, and then we're going to set our sights on, you know, the biggest. So that seems like I didn't know people disagreed with that perspective. I thought that was pretty much widely accepted as what is going on as far as the perspective of the Western Empire. But you don't see it like that. You think they actually see Russia as the bigger threat, and that's why
there's a lot more hatred. There's definitely more hatred. I mean, if you look at how liberals and neocons, they almost talk the same now, but if you talk to them for a prolonged period of time, you'll see the pure, just literally, I mean, like, they don't want to murder the Chinese. They just want to subjugate them. But I think if you get them like to actually spill, they know it's a horrible thing, so they're reluctant to spill up. I think they would murder Russians down to last man, woman, and child if they could. That's how much they hate them. And even just saying it's weaker, because let me tell you this, for an Anglo, not even just white people in general, for an Anglo specifically, the absolute worst insult he can think of is to accuse another white man of being subordinate to the yellow man. I mean, we're talking like Orientalism. We're talking very deep racist stereotypes here. That's the worst way you can insult another white dude. Say, hey, you're the slave of that disgusting yellow menace over there. I mean, I'm serious. That's in their minds. That's the worst way you can insult a Russian, is say, oh, well, Russia's pathetic. They're subordinate to those yellow Chinese. You know,
that's why they call.
That's why they say it.
That's why they say it's, Russia is the junior partner in this dark alliance.
That's an insult. It's an insult. Or how Obama was like, oh, well, Russia is just a regional power. You know,
I still love the Nigeria.
You don't think they really believe it, though? You think that's just rhetoric? Not.
They're obsessed with Russia. They're obsessed to the point, I wonder if they'd be willing to have a nuclear war just to end it, you know?
I agree with the deep-seated hatred, because we noticed that when we switched to Europe, basically 1990s, and it swept Eastern Europe. It's not just Russophobia; it's kill every Rusky for mama. That was the kind of really vileful Nazi shit, basically. So I agree. There's deep emotion there. After the Soviet Union fell, so that was Russia, not hatred for the Soviet Union, hatred for modern Russia.
Well, and I'll tell you a story. Like, you know, when I grew up, you know, with a very conservative education. So I remember, you know, my Christian textbooks would say, you know, the Soviet Union was bad because of
godless communism,
right? But then it was very funny. Like in the last 5 years, I've seen like this switch. It wasn't because now they just openly say the Soviet Union wasn't bad because of communism. They don't say that. They don't really say that anymore. Now they say the Soviet Union was bad because they're Russians. They just come out and say it.
Yeah.
That is new. They just, I think that thread was always there. It just bubbled back up to the surface after.
But wasn't Russia, like modern Russia is in some sense, I mean, of course there was the counter-revolution of 91, but I think there's still relative to the rest of the other Soviet countries, except for maybe Belarus to a certain extent, but and you know, even in Ukraine, you know, there is that I think regard for, if not the Soviet Union, like the legacy of the Soviet Union. You know, I don't see, I mean, there is xenophobia, or there are issues between, say, Central Asians or people from the Caucasus and Slavs, et cetera, but there's not that kind of raw edge that there is in America between different ethnic groups, oftentimes, I think, or, you know, or at least there was a common history of struggle here. And there was, you know, in Russia especially, there was a revolutionary core. You know, I'm trying to think of examples, but, you know, just Russia even Russia today in its degraded form strikes me as, in a way more, I don't want to say internationalist, but, you know, it still has some of that, you know,
collectivism might be a bad word, but
degraded, but it didn't. Well, you know, and I think that's actually part of the message they push on us, and they say it over. Oh, you know, Russia is, you know, a shadow of its former self without the Soviet Union. And I don't think there's actually any basis for saying that. As a percentage of the global economy, it's smaller than the Soviet Union because it doesn't have those other states. However, I wouldn't actually say it's weaker than in the Soviet period. And we also have to remember this hatred predates the Soviet Union. I mean, the French in 1812, the French came in and they desecrated Orthodox churches, Russian Orthodox churches. They would use the icons to cut their sausages, literally. Like they would, I mean, I'm not even kidding. They would just go in and desecrate them. That's another deep-seated hatred.
To add a little wrinkle to that, that's the thing that the Russians, well, including other Soviet people, but the Russians already went through, you know, this kind of inciting ethnic hatred from the outside. And Putin rightly says, kind of as an advert, that for thousands of years, this is where Muslims and Christians, by which he means Pravoslavs, have lived together in relative harmony. There was the experiments in Georgia, in Chechnya, yes, but they went through that together too. So they can't be just, you know, divide and conquered like any other nation. And I think that's another big threat. Just a small thought there.
Well, I should say too, like in terms of religion, or the 1812, the French desecration of Orthodox churches. You also have to remember that, you know, that France was like the Soviet Union of the time, right? Like Napoleon was the Stalin. You know, France represented, you know, a bourgeois power against a monarchy. And so I would think those soldiers were also, you know, I mean, they had a whole cult of atheism, you know, during the French Revolution. And I'm sure that carried on. And here in the Soviet Republic, Soviet Union, you know, there was the Bezbolsnik movement, which I guess was an ideological manifestation of, you know, the mass rejection of religion. Even today, you know, my former sexton, Orthodox communist friend, he said in Barnaul, where he was a sexton at a church, it was a very small percentage of the population from the whole region that would go to church regularly, like much, much less. I think it was in the low single digits compared to, you know, the US, let's say. Yeah, I mean, I think Russia represents it's been able to reach a higher level historically from whatever, you know, the time of, you know, some of the czars, you know, up to the October Revolution and beyond. And I think Russia, you know, there are, you know, Russian Soviet comrades I know, and they very much say, yeah, it's the country is very much reduced compared to the Soviet period, but at the same time, like coming in as something of an outsider, no, not just something of an outsider. It strikes me, they're people who run institutions in Russia, the library, the hospital. You look at Zakharova or Lavrov. They are a cut above. They are a product of a civilization and a revolutionary heritage. Also, just 100 years ago. 100 years after the French Revolution, we had the Paris Commune, right? So France had that kind of cultural, civilizational depth to inspire the rest of the world, and it had a proletariat that would rebel. And I think, yeah, Russia, the people here are rebellious on a certain level. They do not accept things as they are. Not always in a constructive way, but there still is that spirit and legacy, from the bottom and at the top. A capability, a morale, a organizational ability, and a level of organization. So that's threatening. If you're a liberal, your whole worldview is, we are not a country. We are all just individuals. The rabble is the rabble. Stay in your place and shut up. And Russia's like, you're Russian on the street is like, fuck, I will. And so the Russian elite also, I think they pose they do look to Germany and the West, and they have admired America. There is that dialectic, that tension, but at the same time, they have, I think, a much firmer base at this point in history than like the collective West does, which is kind of run its course, socially, ideologically, materially, historically. And Russia.
So I think the government that currently is in Russia, the government currently in China, I think they have a shared vision of the future. And I think it's about peace through mutual prosperity, and it's about ending, imperialism. And I think, they are neighbors, and Putin says we don't pick our neighbors, and they're able to manage that relationship without falling victim to the Western divisive tactics of saying you're subordinate to you, or you're subordinate to you, you're stronger than you. Like that's such a lowbrow, mentality. And I think that statesmen, need, the problem is you get Khrushchevs that really that's the extent of their mentality, but thank goodness there's statesmen like Putin and Xi that understand that, these are relationships that need to be managed, and that, we can have trust, we can have an understanding of a common shared vision, and we can, celebrate the strengths and weaknesses of our relative societies. And what we're going to, what's going to align us is our demand for sovereignty and a demand for a global order that's based on real justice, a real vision of, advancing humanity into the future, and not getting us stalled in this imperialism where it's exploitation, the capture, the rule of the wealthy over the masses, the capture of markets, resources, etc. So it's just like, that's the vision that unites the anti-imperialist bloc against the West, and so if they stay united, the West has already lost. The empire has already lost this struggle, and it's just how it plays out. It's how the West is going to respond to their losing, and the only thing that can change that is this divisive tactic of saying, "Oh, Russia, you don't need to be friends with China because." They think they're better than you. You're just their little plaything. And I mean, those kinds of things, are not beneficial, and it's only going to serve to maintain the Western Empire. But anyway, thank you for letting me have the last word. Just kidding. Somebody else.
Someone needs to clip that. That was a great speech. They tried to do this to Iran's new Prime Minister Pezeshkian. He said, "We don't respond well to pressure. We will keep our relationship with China and Russia as a priority. Fuck off," basically. Beautiful.
The Armenian Prime Minister said that?
Iran. Sorry.
Oh, Iran. Oh, okay.
Pezeshkian, the new Prime Minister.
Oh, okay.
No, they do the same divisive tactic with North Korea, right? So they say, oh, Putin went to North Korea. That's bad for China. China's got to get pissed. North Korea is switching allegiances. It's just they don't understand that there's a principled. Go ahead, Ian. I'm sorry.
Now, let me add one more, because they also tried this recently. The special envoy or permanent whatever to India went there and said, in times of conflict, there is no thing as strategic autonomy, which means you got to pick sides, and you got to pick our side. That's not going to even work on India. You know, yeah.
Interesting, yeah.
Ian, you were trying to get in, and I just didn't let you. I just kept rambling.
No, it's good. I was just going to say the pizza's arrived, so
okay.
But
oh, that's fair.
I would just close by saying that Russia is the last European nation that stayed large. And so I think for accounting for the hatred, that I wouldn't say that's the whole factor, but it is, I would say, a major factor. Every other European nation has shriveled in size and influence, while Russia has not. And part of that is because it wasn't really a colonial power in the normal sense to begin with, because it's just contiguous territory populated by mostly Russians. So it's shrunk, and it did lose, other state, some of those other ethnic groups did eventually split off and get more autonomy and split off into their own states. But Russian territory with the Russians on it is mostly all just still in Russia. And I think there's certainly some resentment from that, especially that island that used to be literally the largest empire in the world, and is now just an island. And they don't even have Russian oligarchs' money anymore. So
what kind of pizza do they sell in Moscow?
No, I don't know what you got. I'll have to go look at it. But they have all the same pizzas, but with less processed.
I just want to leave people with just a little bit of data, because everybody knows China's strength was creating a shared language, 1,000 years ago. I think they have 5 on their money. Just so you know, 56 ethnic groups currently reside within the People's Republic of China. Guess, I think Ian probably knows, how many ethnic groups are there in current modern Russia?
Oh, I don't even remember the exact number. There's probably over 100. I mean,
there's 190.
Yes.
Keeping all that together without shriveling up into these little European mini states as the West did. Yeah, that's unforgivable. I just wanted to end on that.
Thank you, guys. We will be back on, what is today? It's Tuesday. We'll be back on Friday.
Enjoy the double pepperoni. Someone already told us.
That's true.
Yes.
I think Leo Zhao is our guest, so I'm pretty sure he's scheduled for Friday. Alex, we're going to have you back, and I'm sorry about the time. I mean, I just definitely take that's partly my fault at least. But I'm glad you showed up, and thank you for your contribution. Greg, thank you very much. We will see you guys very soon. See you later.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, we are